I'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is we'll do Pledge of Allegiance. I would encourage you to say it with us. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next item, meeting minutes from our prior meeting. Does anyone on the commission have any comments or questions? I'll make a motion to approve prior meeting minutes. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Next order is the consent agenda. So we have 3 addresses: 203 Church, 845 Milmar, and 103 Pine Tree. Matt, do you have any comments on any of these addresses?
We did, yeah. James and I looked at them, and we site inspected all of them, and shade tree protection was fine. Only one tree going on one property, and the owner on that property decided to save the tree. Great. So I think we're good to consent those 3.
And that pine tree address, that one tree to be removed, was that a heritage or less than 30?
No, it was a 24-inch.
Okay, but they're saving it, sounds like?
It was close to the driveway, but the driveway is just gravel, so it's really not an issue. They thought it would be an issue, but it's not.
Sure, okay. Any other comments? I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Second? Thanks, Frank. All in favor? Aye, thank you. All right, I would like to take a pause for any public comment for the consent agenda or otherwise.
Thank you. It's Gretchen Grobel with Radnor Conservancy. I just had a couple of brief comments. I urge Radnor Township and all of its subcommittees to take a hard look at what's happening around all of the land development lately in the township. There is clear value for conserving trees and open space for people and wildlife. Maybe we can urge developers to consider a level of conservation-minded approaches. I had a couple of points I wanted to get across about the Eagle Road and Stratford Avenue St. Honore project. On the updated files, it looks like 19 trees are labeled unidentified on their tree table. I've never seen this, so I'm just curious if this is acceptable. 3 of those trees were labeled heritage trees. There are 2 Katsura trees and a Dawn redwood that are spectacular that sit in front of the Wayne Bed and Breakfast. I'm urging Shade Tree to do all they can to help save these trees. And a question for the developers: have you considered just renovating the bed and breakfast so you don't have to take these trees down? There are definitely some options for porous and flexible sidewalks. I urge you to at least explore this possibility to help lessen the impact of all of the trees that would have to be taken down in order for a sidewalk, a traditional sidewalk, to be put in. I've shared these examples with Shade Tree, and I'm happy to forward it to whomever would like it. The American elm in the main acreage is also a treasure, and it sits right in the eyesight of Stacy Morgan's home, and I believe that this should also be a priority to save. Thank you for pausing a moment to think about the impact you'll be making with this project. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gretchen. All right. We will move on to our primary new grading permit agenda. One quick shuffle, however. We are going to see 506 Chalmont first, just due to personal health reasons. So this would be the tree removal without approval and clearing permits. So if you could please come up and just give us a brief overview of, I know last meeting we had requested a few items, and I know that you've been in discussions with the township. So nothing in significant detail, just give a summary, and then I'd like for Rick and John to speak to what's been done.
Good evening. My name is Carolina Pena. I'm actually the architect on the house, and the landscape architect couldn't be with us this evening. So if you have any questions on the plan that we presented to you, I might be able to answer them.
Very good. Ricky or John, would you like to give an overview of what's happened since last meeting and our requests?
So I believe they're here tonight for the additional removals. In regards to the violations, they have fulfilled the requirement with the replacements. They have been sent to me, and they've met the inch-for-inch requirement. So tonight, I believe they're here for the proposed additional 81 trees. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yep. So they're actually presenting a new project tonight.
Okay. So logistically, knowing that we have had some compounding removals, we will certainly hear the plans tonight, and we'll see what we can do in regards to review. But if you could just speak to, so the trees removed in violation, John or Ricky, could you speak to that specific count that were squared away?
So yes, so there was 13 trees removed additionally, and they're planting 27.
Okay.
Yep.
So the 81 net new trees to be removed, have any of those been removed to date?
No.
Okay. So the 85 replacement trees, what we would be looking for in the plans would be the tree replacement table, which I see you have on page 1 of the plans. You have the trees that are going to be marked, or the trees that will be removed, you have them marked on the plans. So let me just run through this tree table verbally. So it does look like your plans have, so 6 to 18 inch caliper trees, 81, 19 to 29, 11, and then 30 inch plus 1. Sure. Ian, could you bring up, looks like it may be the first page of the plans in the PDF that shows the tree table in the bottom right. While we're looking for that, so this plan has 93 trees to be removed, but in our agenda we have 81. So out of that 93, is it just the 6 to 18 inch 81 trees that are being removed?
It's only 81, correct. And we're leaving some on site.
Okay, but what caliper trees are those 81?
I believe it's on the table.
So you do have 81 marked in the 6 to 18 inch caliper tree, but then you also have 11 marked in the 19 to 29 and then 1 marked in the 30 plus. And it looks like we might be looking at 2 different pages. The page that I'm looking at, top left, has the address, and then revision number 2, August 5th, 2022.
Is this the one you're looking at?
Yes. So if you notice, bottom right, there are 81 6 to 18 inch, 11 19 to 29 inch, and then 1 30 inch, for a total of 93 trees.
Right.
So is that the complete list and not the 81?
Yes, that is correct, yes. Yes, I believe this is the final
Okay. So, if I'm doing the math correctly, it does not look like you have enough replacement large canopy trees per our formula. So you have in the table above 26 large canopy tree replacements, 94 replacements. So that would be a total of 120 trees. So you're proposing replacing with 85 trees, 19 trees, 104 total trees.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I'm looking at somebody else's drawing, I apologize.
So for, just to reiterate what our replacement formula does look like, so for the 6 to 18-inch trees, that's a 1-to-1 replacement. For the 19 to 29, that's 3 replacement trees, 2 being large canopy. For the 30-inch or greater heritage trees, that is 6 replacement trees, 4 being large canopy trees. So what is listed here does not conform to our replacement formula.
I understand. Okay.
So you have a couple of options. One is you could revise the plans, to conform with our replacement formula, and that replacement formula can be found on the Township website. You can reach out to the Township directly if you're unable to find it. And although we discourage this, there is the option to do fee in lieu of, and that would only be, if this board so pleases to pass something like that.
Right,
So-
I think what the owner wants to do is replace
Okay.
and not pay a fee.
Okay.
So real quick, for some clarity, I believe from speaking with their architect at the last meeting, they were a little gun-shy or hesitant because of the violations. I believe from my review that out of those 81 6 to 18-inch trees, they're actually shrubs and understory brush. So they're not all trees.
Okay.
I would say probably from my review, 60% of that is not even tree form.
Understood. Okay. So I know we've seen this address many times, and we want to, get past this just as much as you guys. But what I would recommend is we need to have an accurate listing of trees and replacements per our replacement formula. So I would propose that us as a board make a motion to have the applicant go back, revise the plans with accurate information, and then come back to us next month to seek approval. Second? All in favor? Aye. So if you have any further questions, please reach out to the township, and we'll make sure that we can address any questions before you get to next meeting, so that we make sure that you have a successful path forward.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just make sure you're not calculating small 5-inch or below caliper trees.
I'll talk to.
Which I believe you have.
Yeah,
which I
I'll talk to
think
the
has-
landscape
yep.
architect. I'll talk to Mark about that.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Okay. So back to our new grading permits. Do we have anyone from 28 Ivy Lane with us this evening? Good evening. So it looks like you have roughly 1,100 cubic yards of dirt moving around and 0 trees to be removed. So if you could introduce yourself, the address, and a brief overview of your project, and then we'll talk trees.
Yeah, definitely. Chris Doherty with Shot Group. This 28 Ivy Lane, like you said, it is part of the Ivy Lane subdivision, and we are just building a single-family house. It's a vacant lot right now. We did have our survey crew go out and get updated topography, and whenever they do that, they pick up any trees on the lot. There is open space behind our lot, that is open space to remain. We don't plan on removing any trees in that open space. If you look at it on Google, there are trees behind us, and that's that open space I'm talking about. And then there are 2 trees out front that are both installed per the road grading permit, and those are both escrowed, so if they are damaged or killed, they'll be replaced. Polig is the builder, and they plan on replacing those trees if they're not in good shape.
Great, thank you. So a couple of things that we're looking for are wherever construction activity is happening, we require tree protection at the drip line. So in just looking at the plans, could you describe to us the trees that are nearby and the ingress egress of construction equipment and where the activity will be, and if there's any tree protection of note?
Yeah, so we did put tree protection around the 2 front street trees just to protect them. We were toying with the idea of not putting tree protection there so that they could have the freedom to grade, and that they are escrowed and they will replace them anyway, but we figured we would leave that on to protect those. If you guys would like tree protection along the back, we were hoping that maybe we could put construction fencing, like that orange construction fencing, as more of a compromise. Since the trees aren't on our lot, it'd just be like a little bit of a cheaper option to keep us kind of within our grading limits and keep trucks from going back there.
How close is construction to get to those?
So our closest grade line is 10 feet off the property line, and then open space is after
So
that 10 feet.
it's not, is it over any root mass? Or-
It could be.
I think we'd really need you to not do that.
Okay.
Back off anywhere the roots are going to be the drip line of the tree,
Okay.
pretty much. So,
Are those large trees at the back of your property?
I'm not sure the size exactly.
they're pretty big
Are they?
from my visit. I mean, they sort of shield the road a bit, so.
Okay.
Um,
We could. Would you like tree protection across the whole LED in the back?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's yeah.
And James actually made a point of that when we were talking about whether we should consent this.
Mhm.
So James isn't here, so I'm speaking for James, I guess. But yeah, James would have liked that.
I'm just taking a quick peek at satellite view.
Yeah, because we had other jobs on Ivy that were consent agenda, and I figured that was probably what was triggering the review. Yeah, it makes sense. When you look at it on Google, you can kind of see.
So the trees that abut Newtown Road?
Yes, yeah, that's the open space behind the
Yeah,
subdivision.
those are some big mature trees. I would want to see some tree protection along that back area.
Okay.
Yeah, and just
Yeah, so-
as Matt had mentioned, just make sure that, it's well past the drip line, just so we don't disturb any roots.
So we are doing a majority. I know it's still over top of the root areas, but we are doing more fill in there. It wouldn't be as much cut, which we're thinking would be better for the trees. But we will definitely. I'll draw it on the plan.
Sure. And those 2 trees up front, is there a significant amount of grading? It looks like, is that sidewalk net new that's going in?
Yes, that's new. The road has kind of been graded to accept the sidewalk, so there shouldn't be much grading. They shouldn't be damaged or killed by the grading.
Mhm.
But
The only thing that would kill them would be a lot of construction material on top of them,
Right,
which
yeah.
doesn't have to happen. I don't think that has to happen. Which shouldn't happen anyway.
yeah, I think they'll be okay. We do have the protection around them as well.
And those other apples that were planted along Ivy from land development, how are those faring? Just out of curiosity.
I'm actually not sure.
Okay.
I haven't been out there to see them.
Matt, when you drove by, how did they look?
They made it.
Good, okay. Yeah, I think just for the essence of the street, doing everything that you can to save those apples up front would be advantageous. Are there any trees proposed being planted outside of those 2 apples that are up front?
We do not have any. No, we do not have any shown.
Okay. There's no requirement to do so for what we're reviewing tonight, but it it would be nice to see some more greenery planted along Ivy. Okay, any other questions from the commission? I'll make a motion to approve. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, next address, 400 South Wayne. Do we have anyone from that address? Good evening. So just introduce yourself, your address, the project, and an overview of the project.
My name is Jeff Marshall. I'm with Giordano Landscaping, the landscaper doing this project. This is 400 South Wayne. And what we are doing is along the back of the home, we're building a boulder wall, a decorative boulder wall that needs also a seepage pit that you can see in the front of the home. And we also got the seepage pit engineered to account for a possible shed and patio for eventual building. They're not going in at this moment, but they will be in the future.
Understood. So it looks like, to confirm, only 60 cubic yards of dirt moving around and 0 trees to be removed, correct?
Yes.
And then in regards to where that wall is being built and how you are getting equipment in and out, it looks like the existing drive is likely the case?
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of the dirt movement will come from the seepage pit in the front yard, which is right along our driveway.
Okay. And the seepage pit is a stormwater requirement for the future proposed impervious?
Yes.
Okay. Any trees that are nearby the movement of construction? Doesn't appear to be on the plans, but
A number of trees are bouldered, I would call it, where stockpiles of boulders have been put very, very close to small new trees. Some of them have died, or some of them have been replaced over time. But I'd be very careful of the way the boulders are stockpiled. Make sure they're not near any trees, because the boulders move, they seem like they're moving around a little bit. And I go by that a lot. And they'll just kill it. Either way, the weight of those boulders just suffocate
Yeah,
a small new tree. So, yeah, I mean, the other thing is, if you could do anything, I don't think it's out of our purview, but it might be, to soften that fence. So the fence is jarring when you come down Conestoga Road.
Yes.
And if you planted something in front of it, if you had the room, I think you might have the room, it might soften that fence and make everybody feel better. It's really Berlin, 1945.
Yeah, I'll have to talk with the homeowner and the builder about that.
Yeah, just bring it up, because it's something that I think people might appreciate.
Okay.
Since those boulders have been there for so long, when is this project starting? When are they going to start moving?
This project, we're just waiting for this approval. Those boulders have been here they've been there for a while. What happened is we started working and then got shut down, and now we're going through the process.
So when will it be starting?
It will be started within the coming weeks whenever we get our full approvals.
Thank you.
I know earlier in the year, as you mentioned, that this project was shut down due to some tree removals and other things that were going on. Ricky, I know that you had went to the property and tried to get in touch with the homeowner and the tree service at the time. Could you just speak to if you were successful in that a few months ago?
Yes, the time I received a call from a resident about unauthorized tree work being done on the property. I showed up, rang on the doorbell, also gave a phone call. I received no phone call back, nor did I receive anyone answer the door when I was there, so I wasn't able to speak to anyone as to what happened.
Okay. And I know that matter remains unsolved. And seemingly there were some trees cut down that were not authorized. So I guess my question to you, Ricky, would be, being that matter is unresolved, would it be advantageous for the township to do a site visit work with the contractors, make sure all of the details are accurate, and then move forward from there?
Yeah, no, we could definitely do that. That's fine. I agree.
Okay. Does anyone else on the commission have comment?
Are we collecting a fine for those trees that were taken down unauthorized, or,
I think first we need to evaluate what was taken down.
oh, we don't know that yet?
And, well, we attempted. I think, Ricky tried to get in touch with the owner and the contractors to facilitate that, but, without authorization from the homeowner, we just can't have Ricky going around measuring tree stumps as much as he would want to. So I think it would be in the best interest of everyone, to have the township reengage with the homeowner and all of the contractors involved, now that things seem to be moving again, and go from there. Because as mentioned, if there were trees removed without authorization, whether it was more than 5 trees or any trees that were 30 inches or larger, there would need to be some sort of repercussion because of that.
Excuse me, Seth.
Yes.
If I could jump in, John just reminded me, I apologize. I forget how many times I call him for different incidences, so I apologize. But after this incident occurred, I also, like normally, bring John in, and if I could have him speak as to what he saw when he made the site visit.
So Mr. Norsini sent me out there regarding the boulders, and that's when we were notified about the tree removals. There was no heritage trees, and it was 5 trees that were removed. The boulders were removed off the smaller maple trees at that time, so there really is no violation at this time.
Okay, good to know. I know that there were a couple times of removals. Was that this calendar year's summertime incident?
That I do not know. The one time I was called, there was only 5 stumps, and the boulders were the big issue, and that was mitigated.
Do you recall when that was?
I believe it was spring of 2021, I think.
Okay, so last year. I do know that there was an incident this year, which I think is yet to be evaluated.
I
So-
think with our boulders were moved there spring of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was any issue along with the boulders, they were there in the spring, maybe March to May timeframe.
Sure. Okay. With all things considered, I know that there was, last year some removals within, our ordinance. 5 is fine, but the matter for this year still remains unsolved. And Ricky, myself, I know, neighbors had reached out regarding this. So I still feel, from my perspective, that we would want the township to reengage with all of the contractors and the homeowner to just sign off on this before we sign off on anything. Any comments from the commission?
I mean, you were the landscaper on the site. Did you remove any trees?
We did not. We do not do tree work.
Yeah, I know there was.
All the tree work was done before we touched.
Sure.
So it was nothing to do with us.
Right. Yeah, I do know the tree service, which we will leave unnamed, was not registered with the township, so that was also an issue. So I know this is not your problem, but it is now, so
Yeah.
apologies.
Kind of representing the homeowner tonight, so I
Sure.
understand.
Understood. So I will make a motion to table these plans and the approval until the township can reengage with the homeowner to confirm the incident that happened earlier in the year, to be able to have the township to do an inspection of those removals that had happened. And then from there, we can come back next month from a shade tree perspective, and if everything checks out, then we can approve and proceed as you've planned out. Do I have a second? All in favor? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next address, 155 King of Prussia Road. Good evening, Jonathan. So this is the big project along King of Prussia Road, which included the Penn Medicine Building, now the Brandywine Realty Building, along with the net new hotel. So before we start, I know, these plans had been prior approved in 2019. So as we were discussing, one question that we all had was the 67 trees that we have in the agenda to be removed, if those had already been approved and removed in 2019, or if those are net new trees to be proposed removed.
No, they're from the 2019
Okay.
plans.
So you're here tonight because of the 84,000 cubic yards of dirt to be moved around for construction.
Yes, but I
Okay.
think it's it's changed, the cubic yardage has changed
Sure.
to the
Okay.
point where Steve wanted us to come back and say hello
Perfect.
again.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be a good refresher for us, the community, just to get an update on the project. So if you could just speak high level to some of the
Okay.
changes since 2019, some tree
So-
protection, and go from there.
Yeah, so high level, this is the plan that was approved in 2019 in terms of the removals.
Can you
This
state
is-
your name and credentials,
Oh, I'm
please?
very sorry.
Name
Yes.
and credentials?
Yes. Hello, I'm Jonathan Alderson. I'm a landscape architect.
I was kidding with you, John. So,
Settle down over there.
Yeah, yeah. So, so this is the plan that was approved, and just the overall plan, which is partially developed now, pretty much where the red line is the next phase of this development. So to your right is Penn Medicine, the meadow and plantings around that building. To the left is a parking garage. Up here, and we spoke about this last month, a surface parking, and then there's going to be a hotel, and then I'm here tonight to talk about the office building. So this is the next phase of the development. And what's changed from the landscape is we've just made some changes to the courtyard between the hotel and the office building, because we have a hotel client now that knows a bit more about what they want, and we've sort of been working on the transition from the hotel to the office building. Everything else is pretty much as is. There have been some slight changes in the shrub beds. But just been odd tweaks here and there. The plant count, I think, has gone up by a few trees over what it was back in 2019. So there's going to be a new a meadow stormwater area going in, sort of in the center of the development. There's going to be another stormwater basin that's taxodium grove between this garage and a garage that's already built. There's plantings that go down to the road. There's some shrub plantings on a steep bank. And then there's a lot of trees that go in along King of Prussia Road.
And those trees that exist today along King of Prussia Road, I think the tree protection or some sort of fencing is there
There's still
today,
fencing
correct?
there. Yeah, there's still the chain link fencing there.
So outside of the trees along King of Prussia Road, are there any other trees on site that have existing tree protection or will have tree protection?
Actually, this is right now was the parking lot that was part of SEPTA, and then there's just sort of a building site right now. There's no trees in that area.
Okay, so all of the existing trees remain at King of Prussia Road?
Yes.
So in the order of building operation, is it office, garages, hotel? Do you have a sense of?
I've actually got a representative, Chris Franklin from Brandywine Realty, who may be able to speak to that better than I can.
Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Again, for the record, I'm Chris Franklin from Brandywine Realty Trust. The project that will begin upon issuance of this permit is the office building and the garage under the same permit, under the same timing.
Sure.
And the hotel is under a different timeline.
Okay, great, thank you. In regards to communication to the public of this project, I know that that area is a lot of commercial, so there's not many residents to worry about, but are you planning on any signage or anything else outside of the site to communicate the plans of the project?
There's currently one sign there that speaks to the development. We would likely enhance it to say beginning at this time period and to be complete in this time period to make notice. There will, however, be specific notification made as under our development agreement with the bus yard across the street, and with the high school being so close by. So there will definitely be school district communication. Anyone else, frankly, who has standing, obviously Penn will certainly let them know when we're going to break ground and commence in advance of that. So our pre-construction meetings will include the direct neighbors and
Sure.
the tennis court next door, the tennis facility next door.
Got it, yep, okay, sounds good. I don't have any further questions. Anyone on the commission?
Yeah. So Jonathan, the planting plan in 2019, which we just really, really liked, because I don't think there's anything not to like about it, but in the ensuing construction and development of this place, has anything affected your, integral plan for?
No. I mean, we have added a few more trees around the hotel, but apart from that, everything is as it was in 2019.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, great. Frank, anything? All right. I'll make a motion to approve. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, St. Honore. I see we have some folks here tonight. So we did a site visit a couple weeks ago, chatted through some things. So if you could provide an update on where we are with some of our requests, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I'll just give kind of a very brief overview, and then I'll turn it over to the experts here. I think this is our third trip to you all with this project in this current iteration. At our last meeting with you guys, you had noted that you wanted to have a site visit to take a look and to see the site for yourselves, take a look at some of the trees that we've identified since we've updated the plan. As you know, this is really the third iteration of this plan for the board's consideration. There was a prior plan before the current owner acquired title to the property that was kind of approved and moved through. Then Kaz and his team purchased it not too long ago, and they came back with a 9-lot plan that's currently pending. That's on hold. That was approved by you all and moved on as well to Planning Commission, and then beyond that, they had since acquired additional property, which allowed them to expand the proposed development, and that's the plan that you see tonight. So, beyond that, I'd say I've exhausted my, shade tree expertise, and I can probably even gone a little too far. So I can hand it over to Bern and to Steve, and they can talk a little bit about the trees out there and maybe answer some real questions.
Sounds
Alrighty?
good.
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you, David. Bern Panzak, landscape architect for the project. As Dave said, we've been here before. We've described the project. I think everybody's fairly familiar with it. We've got Eagle Road on the right-hand side, Stratford Avenue on the lower portion of the plan. Originally, there was a 9-lot subdivision, as you know, for this portion of the property, along with a small, narrow flag lot that went out to Stratford. Since then, there's been some acquisition of additional properties along Stratford, and we now have a 14-lot subdivision that's before you tonight. And this hasn't changed really since the last time we were here. We looked at all the appropriate shade tree ordinances from the township, being tree replacement, street tree requirements, and buffering. Of course, the street trees would be for the new cul-de-sac road that you see here. There are buffer requirements and street tree requirements along Eagle, and street tree requirements along Stratford. One of the things that we were able to do with the acquisition of the new properties was to eliminate some stormwater management basins that were below the backs of the original lots along the cul-de-sac. And what we were able to do is to locate that stormwater management, which is really picking up all of the water from the street, and we were able to locate that in a common lot that sits between the new street and Stratford Avenue in the center of the space. The previous plan had open space or common area that was located in that thin strip that went from the original site down to Stratford. We now have a more usable and meaningful open area, common space, that will be, that several of the lots in the community will back up to, and those neighbors will enjoy the benefit of that open space. So in addition to the street tree requirements, there are tree replacement requirements. There are There are 193 trees that will be removed, and all of those trees will be compensated for. We've got a table of compensation of trees that are being removed. In our table, there's gray shading applied to several of these trees, and those trees were not counted in our overall compensation. Viable trees are 168 that will be removed and compensated for. We all got together, we walked the site a week or so ago, and since that time, we actually updated our tree protection to respond to comments that were made. One of the tree protection additions would be around an off-site tree here, and we would provide some greater protection for that tree. There's also a Norway spruce that's located on the adjacent neighboring lot at this location, and we've agreed to willingly add additional tree protection at that location. And then, you know, for several large trees along this property line here, we were able to expand the tree protection here and push out some tree protection, which will make the viability of those neighboring trees a lot more assured. I think that, you know, then going back to the plan, you know, one of the concerns was for buffering along our cul-de-sac drive. So in addition to the street trees that would be required, we are providing Nellie Stevens hollies or evergreen screening along that property line in between the street trees that will add over time a fairly significant buffer along that edge. And I think what was clear in previous presentations was there's an existing oak on a neighboring property here along Eagle. The driveway was relocated several feet away from that, where we could provide extra space for that root zone and provide a better opportunity for that tree there. We've been asked to, and we've accommodated the ordinance-required sidewalks to be placed along Eagle. Right now, there's sidewalks that run along our neighboring properties from the Eagle-Stratford intersection back to our property in both directions. We've shown and agreed to extend that sidewalk along Eagle to this point, and I believe it's been agreed that at this location, we would provide a point of refuge at this location in terms of the sidewalk, but we would terminate the sidewalk and not extend the sidewalk fully, which would have an adverse effect on that oak tree in that location. We do have a fairly significant embankment that runs along this edge, and that's really the issue, the grading, and that would be associated with the sidewalk. We've also shown sidewalk and agreed to extend the sidewalk through our frontage along the adjacent neighbor who's agreed to have us provide that sidewalk along there, and then there will be additional sidewalk that will extend to the end of an additional lot that is being developed as well. All of the replacement trees have been arrayed around the property, including the buffer trees that I mentioned earlier. There's been inter-property buffering that we placed there to screen and provide privacy for the future residents of the community. And we've also provided screening and buffering where it was needed and appropriate to other adjacent properties. I think that pretty much addresses the presentation of our shade tree.
Great, thank you. Could you bring up the plans that are on the floor? We'll just take a quick review of that. So thank you for putting this together for our requests. Much appreciated. So 193 trees to be removed. You had mentioned all of those were going to be replaced for, but it sounds like the 25 that are marked as hazardous or dead were subtracted from that count, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So typically we do, I brought this up a couple times, require a hazardous tree report, which formalized submission to the township with photos. But I think we could probably work through that. We could possibly, create a contingency of approval based off of receiving something like that. One thing I did want to discuss, there were a few trees that are marked as unidentified in that index.
Yep.
Could we speak to that as to why they are marked unidentified?
Yeah, we were, moving rather quickly as the properties were being acquired, and we do have those trees identified, and those items can be filled in on that chart, and all that stuff provided as an additional update. Working from the survey in the period we were working in.
Sure, but it looks like none of the trees that are marked dead or hazardous are unidentified. Those all have species associated with them.
That's correct. And I guess just to that point, most of the assessment of the hazardous dead or diseased trees fell into the original property. As we were putting the plans together, we did not do that assessment, except for ones that were extremely obvious, like the large beech that sits in front of the bed and breakfast. So there are likely to be other trees that would fall into that category, but they've been compensated for without regard to their health in that case.
Sure, okay. So from an ordinance perspective, we touched on replacement formula, we touched on large canopy, we had a discussion on species, we talked hazard trees, we talked tree protection. So I think we've covered off on everything that we needed to. Before we get to public comment, any other comments from the commission? Frank?
Just to be clear, the 6 trees along Stratford, Catastora, the Dawn Redwood, the plan is still to take them down?
We believe, in kind of concert with our arborist consultant, that with the addition of the sidewalk in that location, that those trees would be adversely affected to the point of not being viable in the future. And
So
the
you're still going to take them down?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and as to the canopy that is existing there, mostly up along Eagle Road to the right there, has anything been done to preserve that canopy? Or is it still all coming down?
Yeah, it is coming down. I think after walking the site, in our opinion, there's a multitude of degraded species in that stand of trees, and we believe that with the compensation that's provided here, this canopy will develop over time and be a healthier, more viable tree canopy into the future.
Have you considered less development?
Well, we have in a sense that we are, I think we're 10,000 square foot lots where we would be able to develop as small as a 7,000 square foot lot. So I think that's, already kind of been built into our planning project.
Yeah, some other developers have, I'm thinking over by Eastern University and Valley Forge Military Academy. We're going in with 19 homes, and after the public comment, they reduced it to 17 homes. Have you considered having less homes on the property?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple comments. The holly screen, I would lose that. Holly screen is not going to be tall enough. It's not going to be attractive enough. I'd go green giants or cryptomerias or some combination of that, especially for the neighbor who's most affected. Sidewalks definitely needed on Stratford. I was over there today because I wanted to see what trees weren't identified. I also noticed on the plan that there's some little circles that just say tree. It doesn't have a number. So I don't know why that exists, why a tree, it's minutia, but it's just something that, if you guys are going to clean this up, it's something to look at.
Okay.
But I would say the Katsuras, if there's any way on earth to save the Katsuras, it was cotton candy today. The smell coming out of those Katsuras, and it was magical, and it was a whole street smelled like that, and it was just like to lose those Katsuras and the Dawn Redwood. I would say those are the two species that if you guys can make a sidewalk go around those trees somehow, just be creative, that would please me, and I think it would please the residents. I know you need a sidewalk on that street, it's dangerous, but my impression of those Katsuras and how the Dawn Redwood looks, I would be very unhappy to see those trees go.
Right. Well, to that point, I think we'd be happy to add Katsura tree to the landscape list. That's not a native species. It's not typically one that you guys would prefer. So, but we're happy to kind of add that into the plan.
But to Matt's point, why couldn't we do the porous gravel sidewalk, something? Because yes, maybe you put one on your replacement list, but that'll be years before it's of the caliber and magnitude of what we have existing. Couldn't you do some kind of a porous gravel type sidewalk there to save these trees?
It's more effect of the excavation that's required to install any sidewalk, whether it's porous or conventional concrete. If you're out there, you notice the grade does pick up from the road. So we have to bring that down to create a level and ADA accessible route. And again, it's not really the type, it's the construction that has to be involved for any type of walk. And in fact, typically with a porous walk, you're going to put additional stone beneath that and actually excavate deeper to allow that water to infiltrate below the sidewalk.
I mean, I'm not a builder, but it seems to me, do we have to really go to such a high A+ level here? I mean, this is not a heavily walked area. Couldn't it be some kind of a slate or less depth so you could save these trees? I mean, I think the trees are more important than the sidewalk in some issues here.
We were out there today with Steve Norsini from the Township and reviewed it. They were very happy to see the sidewalk going in. That would meet the
Does
township
he realize those
standard.
trees are going down?
Yes, he does.
I'm really unhappy about that.
Sure.
I mean, trees for a sidewalk, I would want to talk to Steve about that.
Yeah, I do know that the neighbors had mentioned, there's a pathway on the other side of the street that's kind of used. And I know when we were there, those cars do go by pretty quickly. So I do understand, from a safety and from a compliance perspective. One thing to check with Steve Norsini that we can kind of do offline is, from a code compliance perspective, if beyond, a concrete sidewalk, if there's any other alternatives. But, we'll take that as an action item to follow up on. All right, so I think we've all spoken. Sure, go ahead, Jenny.
I just wanted to follow up on Gretchen's comment about the American elm. Is that being saved, protected?
That tree is located, I believe, is this the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. It's very close to the path of our roadway, and it would not be saved at this point.
Okay. Do we have anyone for public comment? So we have a few neighbors here. Yes, please come up, state your name and address and your concerns.
Stacy Morgan. I live at 424 West Avenue. I've been here throughout the whole thing. This is the American elm that it's got a 100-foot drip line. The DBH on the multi-stem tree or the two trees, however you want to look at it, I think it's in the list of Burns' list as 3 trees. Again, I believe it's 2 trees with a multi-stem and then a second tree. I'm not really sure. I'm not an arborist. But that being said, that does sit right here is my property, the green marks, and this is the tree. Also, my pine tree is 8 feet in diameter. I believe the DBH is 30 plus on that. And I have expressed concern multiple times about my pine tree in the corner next to the sanitary sewer. And I was told repeatedly that it would not be affected. They weren't tying into that. And on the walkabout, I found out that they are tying into it. And I think Byrne just said, we've added tree protection, and you're talking about a huge pine tree. Right here is in this corner with the sewer. And now they're going to be cutting into it to tie into, I guess, the sewers for all the 14 houses. I'm not really sure. At first they said that was tied off and they're going to something lower. So that was a big surprise to me on the walkabout. I have repeatedly talked about that pine tree because that's on my property. The American elm has a 100-foot drip line. It has a beautiful, well-formed canopy. It's irreplaceable. It's priceless. I don't care what they put in. That being said, I had mentioned, and I know it wouldn't be well received, but I thought about like looking at it, and I'm sure they'll have comment. Here's my house. Here's the road. Here's the road. I guess I should have this. So the road's here. The tree is basically here. These 3 houses, I have 3 driveways now shooting into the back face of my property. I have a fire hydrant, and I have 2 lights. So now, and barking dogs, and noise pollution for 3 years, I believe it's anticipated for. All I said was, I want a hedge. I don't want the holly. I want a solid fence. I want something. I don't want to look at this for 3 years. That is my backyard all along this face. I haven't heard anything, but the holly keeps coming up. I said green giant too. I like green giant. They grow fast. They give a nice hedge. That being said, this stormwater management that's supposed to be green space for everybody, I don't understand why the topography of the land goes this way, and the runoff and the shedding of the water, and yet they have it coming down here and coming in here when it would make more sense to be here. So you could push these 3 houses back and put the catch here, bend the road, and save the tree. I really think there's a way around this to save that tree, but it would cost money. So I don't know, maybe it's all about money. But that being said, there was some discussion, there's been a lot of discussion about this oak and how they jogged the road to give more coverage to the oak up here on the corner, and also to protect this house from getting headlights. Well, now I have 3 coming in my house, and I'm very, very much affected. I have a 170-foot face on there of fencing right now, and anyway, so that being said, let's see if there's anything else. Again, it started off as 9 houses, and then because they acquired more property, it became almost like in a hurry. It seems everything's in a hurry. But so if we look here, so we're at 193 red X's. I probably used a whole red pen to cut down those trees. Let me just look at my list a second. Give me a second here, guys. Alternatives. The sidewalks. I had mentioned the porous sidewalk stuff over at Jenkins Arboretum. They have it on all sorts of grades there. It doesn't have to be flat and perfectly level. I mean, they've used it. It's ADA compliant. I had mentioned that early on that they have that for the Dawn Redwood. Electrical lines have not been discussed at all, and I am very curious about the electrical lines. There's a box on the corner of my property that, I don't know, are the lines going to go out that and feed the houses? And then that's like visual pollution, noise pollution, dust pollution. You know, it's just never ending, I guess. I don't know. That's not the shade trees issue, but I was curious if they're doing 197 trees down. How many are you saving? Are you saving any? There's like the walnuts on the edge and I guess an American elm. They're going to treat an American elm close to the edge of somebody else's property, but not treat this one. And incidentally, this is not diseased, according to Steve Schreiner. That's what he said on the walkabout. I asked him specifically, it is not diseased. So why can't we treat that one? They're treating another one. I don't know. It's really sad to see such a well-formed, beautiful tree just cut down. That's really sad. Okay, let me just see. The wildlife back there. Gretchen mentioned the wildlife. There is quite a bit of wildlife that it's enjoyable to watch, and I know they'll be totally affected, and they'll run out into like the other areas. But there's a den of foxes, there's groundhogs, there's deer, There's quite a lot, and birds, lots of birds, so they'll all be affected. And I know that was discussed in one of the previous agenda things about, and maybe it has to do with commercial stuff, but they talked about signage about the development. There's no signage. I think a lot of neighbors in the area, I know they've been sent a letter, I've seen the letter, but there's no signage to let people know that this is going to happen, and all of a sudden they're like, one of my neighbors up the street on the other side sent me an email. Are they cutting down all those trees? Like, he didn't know. Like, I'm just saying, it's not a well-known fact. And I know they followed the rules and sent what they can to everybody, but anyway, and I don't know what the shade tree criteria is. I know there's a pamphlet and the DBH and what creates a heritage tree, but I believe the American elm is a heritage tree. I think it meets the criteria. I don't know exactly. I tried to do the calculations. I'm not sure they're correct, but anyway, I think I've covered everything, and I feel like there's some alternatives, but that's it.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to?
Yeah,
Sure.
So I'll give a brief response to some of that. A lot of that, unfortunately, is really land development type material, but there was some shade tree material in there I think that we can be responsive to. But I have to say, so I've represented a lot of developers, and I appreciate that development is difficult. It's a difficult thing. Any redevelopment of land like this, in particular, can be very offensive to people because it's a beautiful piece of land. And, it's incumbent on developers, whether it be this one or any other developer, to do their best to, at first, follow the ordinance. Those are the rules, those are the guidelines that are set out for the developer. And beyond that, do whatever they can to try and be responsive. If it's a good developer, and I've known Kaz all 20 years of my practice, and he is a responsive guy, and be responsive to the neighbors. And I can tell you, specifically to the woman who was just up here, I've been on a couple of walks on this site with her, and I appreciate the concern there. And I very much appreciate the specific concerns around the one large tree that's in the back of her property. And Kaz does as well, and Steve does, and Byrne. And the reality of that tree and a redevelopment of this site is it can't logistically be saved. This is not an overdevelopment. It's just not. It may appear that way on paper, but I can assure you it could be a lot more dense, which would have a lot more impact on everything around it. And that tree, it's going to come down with the redevelopment of this site. And it's been a part of two prior developments that have come through, and in both of those, two different, a different developer and now Kaz, it's come down. So all I can say is we can be responsive under the ordinance. We can absolutely change our buffer. And I know Kaz will. If it's a green giant buffer, plus the other tree, what's it? Cryptomerium, well outside of my scope of knowledge, they will plant that buffer. If that's what the shade tree encourages and wants, that is an absolute possibility. If a neighbor wants, specifically during construction, a solid fence, so they don't have to look at this construction, we can be responsive there. On the walk with the neighbors that came on multiple occasions, I know Kaz has offered to do plantings on their property to help with a buffer, to increase screening, and he will do that. I've seen him do that on other developments. He wants them to believe in the project because ultimately he believes that it will make this property long-term a more viable, vibrant community. And that is both in livability as well as plantings and ultimate canopy and cover. And one of the things I recall speaking of when we were walking on this site was the immediate pain of losing some of these trees and the cover that they provide is real. But long-term, what will be planted here will be magnificent, and it will serve generations to come. And a lot of these trees, and Steve will speak to it when he gets up, have reached a peak in their life when they are now on the opposite side. Some could have another 30 years, maybe. I guess that's right? There are some out there that will, but what we plant will have a longer life than that. And so I wanted to say that before we get up and start telling you all the reasons why what we're doing is okay. Because I want to appreciate what you guys are doing and everything that these folks are saying. I get it, and we're going to do the very best we can do here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to tell you exactly how that's going to happen.
Before you do that, I have a question for you, because you say there's absolutely no way you can save that American elm. I'm in business development for Amtrak, so where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, building development is creative. If you folks want to save that tree, I believe you probably can come up with a way to do so. And I would really, really request that you put your minds together and try and see if there's some way you can move that road enough to save that beautiful elm tree. And I appreciate your comments, and you're absolutely right. You have to follow the ordinance, and then you have to try and satisfy for the neighbors' requests. And I think this is a big request by the neighbors and a very important one. And I also wanted to hear your follow-up to Stacy's question about her pine tree. What are you going to do to save her pine tree? I haven't heard anybody address that yet.
So Steve will address that. I know that was something that was specifically addressed on the walk, and then I think individually with Stacy as well, ways to work with that pine. And for clarity on the manhole, it is going to be decommissioned. It's no longer going to be decommissioned, tied into, and further down it stays open, off the site. I don't know. So you want to probably address that to make it clear, yeah.
So the manhole that's adjacent to her property is one where the sewer comes onto our property, and then currently it runs down the property line and then down the line that straddles 235 Stratford Avenue. So all we're going to do is tie into the back side of that manhole on the opposite side from the tree, extend that line into the road, down the middle of the new road, and then over to tie into the existing line. By doing that, we don't have to make multiple connections to the line that runs along the entirety of her backyard. So I think that's where some of the confusion came in when we say we weren't tying into it. We're not tying into that existing line. We do have to extend the manhole because that's how I believe all the lots on West Avenue are served. It's not to serve our
How far is the
property.
manhole from the tree?
From the tree, 6, 8 feet. The manhole from.
Yeah, I'd say approximately 10, 12 feet from the tree.
And that is on the opposite side. So we're tying in. So the manhole will sit between any work we're doing and that tree. And Steve will discuss on the construction practices that we'll employ during that to not cause any harm.
Good evening. Steve Schrein here. A lot of questions have been raised, so let me kind of tick those off for everybody. Thank you. All right. You mentioned a hazardous tree report. I did put one together basically as an overview. I didn't go through every tree. You folks that were out with us the other night, you could clearly see that there are more than 25 trees that are dead, diseased, or dying on that site. Kaz is a very responsible developer in the community. We could have easily increased that number tremendously. We just really looked at the stone dead trees, put those out of the calculation, considered everything else as something that we wanted to consider as far as planting. So I'm happy to submit that. I do have pictures. Of the trees on the site, identifying some of the hazards and where they are, the condition of the bed and breakfast large tree, the various cherries, ash, and sassafras trees that have declined, in these areas over here. Here's some others. So I'll submit that either tonight or send it over in the morning. But I do have that report squared away. In regard to the unidentified trees, that was, as Byrne said, it was just a clerical error. We do have all the trees identified on the site. It just didn't hit the upgraded tablet, so apologize for that issue there.
Great, thank you.
When we took our walkthrough, there were a number of requests made by the shade tree, so I just wanted to make sure that they were on the record and identified. Obviously, CAS wants to adhere to those requests. Byrne already touched on it lightly, or directly rather. The tree protection, expanded tree protection for the neighboring and adjoining properties. The pre and post root care, not only to the trees that remain on site, but the adjacent properties as far as the fertilization and so forth. And then we will also monitor through the spring, summer, and the whole development process. If we get into low rain periods, drought periods, we will be out irrigating not only the heritage trees on CAS's property, but those adjacent trees. I will meet with those owners and so forth before anything gets conducted out there to seek their permission and understanding on that. But as far as the root development into CAS's property, they will be protected. The elm we talked about as far as injection and prophylactic sprays for the bark beetle during the summer months. So hazardous trees, I mean, like I mentioned just briefly, there are many more trees that we could easily consider, but we did not. Sidewalk issues. The Norway maple up on Stratford Ave, or pardon me, Eagle Road, that's already been addressed with the township as far as it needing to be removed for the new sidewalk. The accommodation made for the adjacent pin oak, we've already addressed. Along Stratford Avenue, there are 2 oak trees that need to come out. Steve Norsini saw those and acknowledged that the sidewalk, they need to go. Then we get to the trees of concern. We have the sycamore tree, and then we have a katsura, a river birch, and a katsura. And then further down, we have the dawn redwood. When we took our walk through, you could really get a sense of the topography, the type of excavation that would need to happen, the introduction of utilities to the new sites and so forth. When we looked at the site, and it's circumspect, if you look up in the sky, the aerial lines are there, and if you see where the existing trees are today, they've been already routinely cut back from PICO. So as those trees continue to grow, they're going to still continue to be an electrical liability. So looking at the utility lines, the sidewalk infrastructure, the driveways and so forth, it felt like the better option is to plant new trees, putting the right tree in the right location further back to accommodate its growth for many more years before becoming an issue with the utility and so forth. We looked at shifting driveways and moving things, but the compensation that you would need to accommodate the tree wouldn't exist, in doing that. So I felt strongly that, as upsetting as it is, removing those trees allows the new treescape to mature and develop into a healthier, fuller, longer-term option versus, and I've been in this situation many times over the years, we go to great extents trying to preserve a tree, and then it's basically the start of its demise over the next 5 to 7 years, and then we're back taking it down and then putting in a smaller tree, or no tree goes in. So Kaz feels passionate about the trees. I feel passionate about the trees. Everybody does. We're just thinking longer term, it is the best approach along the street. So I'm happy to field questions on that. Oh, if there are questions, or I can go to the Norway spruce.
Yeah, Steve, I just ask, the redwood is definitely, the power goes through the middle of it.
Yeah.
So the redwood it's vibrant on the bottom, it has a big gap in the middle where there's no limbs, and it has a top.
Yes.
Now, how long is that tree going to live in an environment, in that kind of environment? Because they're long livers, right?
Correct. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the Willows has one, and, they've been treating it and taking care of it.
Sure.
Because they value it.
I think undisturbed, obviously it has more time. Like we mentioned, a number of those trees have more time. But when you're looking at the impact that needs to happen, a driveway, stormwater, infiltration areas need to happen there. there wasn't an option to move the driveway. It's basically the wrong tree in the wrong spot if you look at it from tree happiness,
Right.
given where
But
it is.
the street itself is right up against it.
Correct.
And not, that isn't really affecting it, apparently.
No, it's adjusting to it. But the other thing, too, is if you look at the driveway, you'll see there are several huge lateral roots that are already starting to heave, the driveway. The roadway construction is at a higher degree, so you haven't seen that heaving yet, but in the driveway, so forth. So,
But do those trees, do they put knees up?
no, that would be the
So they
ball
don't do
cypress.
that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're surface rooted, though.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so, I guess my point is, if I was Cass, I would say, I'm going to take a shot at this one.
Yeah.
Try to work some kind of sidewalk around this tree, even if it's like not even a sidewalk, just like forget the sidewalk for 10 feet. I'll go tell Steve Norsini, who loves sidewalks, by the way.
Yeah.
He thinks Radnor needs more sidewalks, so that's where he's coming from. And I would not want to be killed on that street if there wasn't a sidewalk, because you would. I had to walk through the front yards of neighbors' houses.
Sure.
In order to walk down to where we went in on our walk. I couldn't walk in the street. I couldn't. I would have been hit.
Yeah.
So sidewalks have to go there, but just that tree, because it's so big and it's so, you can put another Dawn redwood in, but unless you're going to go get a 39-foot tree spade.
Yeah.
If you guys are willing to put a fully mature tree in.
Yeah. So I would say in regard to the Dawn redwood in that location, having we'll say the restraints of the driveway, the infrastructure that needs to be brought in, the sidewalk that's there, and then the overhead utilities. Initially when that tree was planted, it was the wrong tree in the wrong spot. That's a tree that wants to spread to 60, 80 feet, and it's put right there. So I don't want to go around and around with it. We've looked at it so many times. Kaz would love to keep that tree. I would love to keep that tree. But I don't want to go back in 2 years and take a tree down because we were highly emotional one night when I can see down the road a treescape that's going to be magnificent in that 3-year period.
Okay, so would you guys be amenable, though, then to going beyond the DBH that shade tree requires in order to really set something in place where the neighbors go, holy smokes, this developer really, really did care about.
Yeah, great suggestion. Kaz just gave the thumbs up. So more than happy to bump up those calipers, to have that canopy fuller, more immediate. Yes.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I did notice when we were doing the site visit that Dawn redwood, if you look kind of right above the utility pole, there's a huge chunk of, and I have a picture from Street View here, a huge chunk of the bark that is missing, and it almost looks like, given a really high windstorm, that thing may snap in half. I love the Dawn redwood. I appreciate it, but to the other comments, I think the safety of people sometimes can take precedence over a tree. I do like the ideas of exploring, per code requirements, some sort of alternative sidewalk. So, I do think there are some things that we can do to look at these trees, to save them, knowing that they are large heritage trees. It would be nice to save 1 or 2 of them for this entire project. But to not prolong this meeting any longer than it needs to be, public comment, unless you had some other things to chat about, Steve.
I just wanted to touch on
Sure.
a few things
Yep.
that
Sounds
Stacy raised. Just so a point of clarification, even if the sidewalk weren't going to be, we'll say, constructed, with the driveway, the impact to infrastructure and so forth, I still feel strongly that the impact on the root system would significantly compromise the survivability of the tree. So I'm actually looking long-term for the benefit of Radnor Township in having that treescape there. And I know it's a stinker, but sometimes you have to look past the emotion and further down, and I think accommodating with larger trees is the right way, further back from the utility.
So Steve, before you move on, can you
Sure.
speak to the fact that this manhole by Stacy's pine tree, I'm looking out for our neighbors here, is 10 feet away evidently. In your opinion, is that pine tree going to be okay and not be affected then?
Yes.
Okay, there you go, Stacy. You should be all right.
Well, I can't guarantee where
I mean,
Steve's going to be.
I mean, you're getting as good an answer as you're going to get from an experienced guy like this.
It could be closer than 10 feet. The distance at this point doesn't matter from the standpoint that the root system has basically compartmentalized or encompassed, that whole infrastructure there. So that's why we're going to go to great lengths of not only, fencing the tree, we're going to fertilize in the beginning. And what I assured Stacy in our walkthrough, and everyone was there, when we learned that there is going to be a lateral penetration into the sewer. Fortunately, it's not running parallel with the fence going all the way down.
Right.
So it's the least intrusive way to enter a root zone of a tree. And I assured her, and I have it in writing, and I'm going to send this email to you folks as a follow-up from our walkthrough. I will be on site and with the excavator, and we will either hand dig, air spade, whatever it takes. And if we encounter any roots, we will prune. I will photo document the whole bit. I will be there for the backfill and the entire procedure, if you will. And I have an extremely high degree of confidence that there'll be minimal to no stress felt by that tree, because greater than 2/3 or more are going to be unaffected.
And so if that's everyone's hope, Steve, but say it goes downhill and this doesn't work and the tree dies, Cass, what would you do for Stacy? I mean, if this tree dies because of that intervention, there should be something going back to the property owner,
If
right?
we determine that it was the root pruning,
Right.
But I'll take that bet.
Well, it's not bad.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying as far as the tree doing fine and not having an issue.
Oh, no, I hope it does.
Yeah.
But what happens if
But let's say because the tree's already at a lien, let's say there's an ice storm in 3 years and it falls over to an ice storm. That wasn't because of the root pruning.
Well, no,
but you could say that the roots were pruned. You see what I'm saying? So that's my problem. So,
it's just, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
like whether that's something that somebody would say, yeah, that sounds fair. This is a big tree and we're like digging around it and we're air spading it and.
It's going to be more surgical than just digging around it. And we can bring in another consultant if we want to.
No, that's not a
third.
Trust.
No, I got it. But I'm just saying if we want somebody else to make the evaluation or see what we're doing.
What I'm saying is just a simple, if this big tree dies a year and a half from now without an ice storm, you'd know what did it.
But it's not as a result of what's going to happen, because I've evaluated this tree. I've evaluated the root plate. I know how we're going to go through it. We discussed the diameter in which we need to go, and it's going to limited to know, and that's why I'll photo document everything. But to guarantee on a living organism, that's like asking the doctor with your triple bypass, hey, are you going to, what's my guarantee? Who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right.
All right.
I think that was it.
Why don't we just make it easy and put compensation in the schedule for the mere fact that possibility it could fail. That way we're covered.
Is there an example of doing that in projects past, John? Okay.
We have.
Is that a set duration escrow where the funds are released after?
It is indeed, yes.
Sure. So what's
Correct.
your typical length period, 2, 3 years?
What's the size of the tree, Steve?
I'd say it's about 30 inch.
30 inch? Yeah. So 6 trees, got to go back in, compensation value of 6 trees.
Sure. And that would remain.
That works well.
And that would remain project completion plus 1 or 2 years, whatever that looks like.
Correct. Stacy, it'll actually be the value of those trees. So you'll be able to take those funds and put them towards a new tree if that tree were to fail or parts of the tree were to fail.
Sure.
But it does give insurance for you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Public comment, I will limit to 5 minutes per next public comment, just so we're not
Seth,
here.
can I
until-
just ask one quick question?
Yes.
And I'm not sure who from the development group can answer it. I do, me over here. Is this the same plan that we saw in front of the Board of Commissioners, or is this different? I know we've seen the cul-de-sac. I'm wondering about the homes, and I don't want to derail this. I'm just, is this the same plan, or is this coming back?
So this, as you see here, is different with the 14 lots, Lisa. The top portion that you're seeing with the cul-de-sac is this kind of up in here, has been seen and approved twice. So this piece down at the bottom is new.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. Public comment? State your name and address.
Name is Marlon Eason, address is 230 Windermere Avenue, so I am not a neighbor to this. This is actually my first shade tree commission to come to, and the reason I came tonight is that over the last, I guess, 2 years, of course, always after the fact, have been stunned to learn at how many of our tree canopy is being lost in our community. And I guess I, like a lot of the citizens of this township, was under the misapprehension that our shade tree ordinance was designed to help protect particularly heritage trees. Like I am sitting here once again. I've never seen this. I was here just to become informed, and I am dumbstruck that magnificent American elm is just collateral damage. So I guess this is a request for clarification. Since this plan has already been approved, the cul-de-sac, it would appear that there's nothing in our ordinance that actually precludes a plan from going forward because it's taking down too many particularly large mature trees. So my question is my understanding here correct?
It is correct, and you would find that our shade tree ordinance is on par with most. However, we are working on a comprehensive ordinance update. So there are some provisions that we're working on that would help, save more trees, if you will.
Yeah.
And just one point of clarification on that American elm. I know Steve Schreiner did verify while we were on site that is not considered one tree. That is multiple trees.
Which is even better.
Sure, but it's
from a visual.
Right. The total DBH is not as significant as it seems. Just wanted to make sure I clarified that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christina Peters at 429 King of Prussia Road, and I too am distressed at the amount of trees we're losing overall, not only in this project, but in that several of the projects we've looked at this evening. The Chaumont, just clear cut with what the heck, right? I mean, I don't know what to say about that. It's egregious and should be really seriously addressed. Listening to the discussion about this project this evening, I'm struck by, maybe you could have shoehorned a few more houses in here, but it's kind of hard to tell how. And I would suggest to you that this is a tree-loving community. There are a lot of places nearby where a homeowner can go buy some place that's been clear-cut or was maybe recently a farm and have a bunch of little trees on it. There aren't very many places where you can go and live in a community that has the high shade of a mature canopy or look on the birds and wildlife that enjoy a mature tree. And I would suggest to you that the homeowners who will come to enjoy this space as their home might really view that elm tree, for example, as a signature of their community. And, you know, elm trees can live for a long time if they're taken care of. Even now, 200 years is possible. The Katsuras and the Dawn Redwood, I think, are also very appreciated and could, with a little ingenuity, be accommodated. And again, people look to trees as the signature of their community. The American hollies, I would agree with you, are, what do they do? That's all I have to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay. Any other comment from the commission?
I'd like to, I didn't catch your name from Windermere, but the interpretation of our ordinance, I went to the ordinance and looked at the legislative intent of the ordinance, and it is to maintain a maximum tree canopy. So one of our charges as a shade tree commission is to make sure that the canopy is either maintained or increased.
So I would state that per our ordinance and per prior approvals that, although our mission as the Shade Tree Commission, yes, is to save as many trees as possible per our removal and replacement formula, and per all of the discussions, as we've chatted through. The numbers do check out. We've discussed the species. We've went through the hazard tree report. Steve, you're going to submit that. So, we do have the obligation to approve based off of, what the precedent that we've set prior with these sorts of approvals. I'm not sure that we can necessarily deny this based off of, the sake of saving as many trees as possible. There has been, of course, as we all know, an influx of new developments over the past few years, and I think that's been spurring a lot of these conversations around these new developments going in, people moving into the township. Of course, we don't want to add any more traffic to Lancaster Ave than already exists, but these developments have been approved, they will be approved, and they will come. And I think, at least in my eyes, we've approved this previously. We've done a site visit, and the developer has, kind of bent over backwards to make some changes. Planning has looked at this. They've approved it. The board has looked at this in a prior state and approved it. So with these 4 additional homes, I understand that there are new trees that are coming down along Eagle Road and Stratford Road, but with the trade-off of putting in safety precautions for pedestrians, which I think is beneficial. And I think everything that has been mentioned around the long-term effect of this planting plan, I think is very beneficial to the area. Even as chair of the Shade Tree Commission, I can see that, yes, there are a couple of beautiful trees coming down. However, the trees going in are very thoughtful, in my opinion, and per our ordinance, everything does check out. So before I make a motion, is there anyone else that has any comment on the commission?
I would suggest we wait to approve until we can talk to Steve about the sidewalk issue. And I'd also like to have an approved condition on allowing the American elm to stay. Give it a chance. I understand what you're saying, Steve, but give it a chance. The road may be too close. Maybe you can move it over a few feet. Give it a chance. Let it see if it can make it. Why just give up and cut it down? So those would be my 2 comments.
Sure.
Seth, what I would say is that we only have 4 members here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
The vice chair's not here. The former chair's not here. I'd rather, I don't know if this is even legal, but I think it'd be better to take a vote with a full shade tree commission, or at least more than 4 members.
So, Matt, we're going to ask the commission to vote tonight, just because we have to move the project along. We have already granted 4 extensions to the board for this project so that we could accommodate the walkthrough and come back to our 3rd visit back here. So I respectfully would ask the commission, shade tree, to make a vote tonight, a recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, and Matt, given, we do have a quorum tonight, and I think all of the requests have been satisfied, so I don't think that there's really any legal mechanism for us to delay this. At the very least, I can make a motion, and then we can vote, and of course, we can see, where that vote nets out, of course. The one thing I would say is, referencing the ordinance, as mentioned, it does check out. There could be a scenario where, we've had this happen in the past where at some point we do not get reciprocal responsibility on the developer side, and we lose that window of opportunity for negotiations when it comes to the plans. Not to say that Kaz and the team would do that, but per our ordinance, we do have all of the boxes ticked in my eyes. So with that, I would make a motion to approve contingent upon Steve Schreiner providing the hazard tree report and working with the neighbors to adjust the species as we've discussed, so American hollies and swap for green giant, and per the requests that we had during the site visit, so the maintenance plan and so forth.
And
We will work with the township arborist to increase the size of the trees that are being replanted.
Yes, and DBH increase per request.
And the escrow.
And the escrow for the pine tree. So that would be, since it's a heritage tree, 6 replacements, we can work out the specific numbers with the township. So that would remain an escrow. Completion of project, we'll say plus 2 years. Sounds reasonable. I think 1 year would be too short. So we'll wrap all of that into a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, so to approve, to not approve. Stalemate. I will need to confer with the township on what that means for the project. It's rare that we're in this scenario. So at this point, what I would say is you guys are good to go. And from a township perspective, we will determine what are the next steps.
Can I offer some comment to this?
Sure.
Just for kind of an understanding, and Lisa probably knows as well as anybody, but I would encourage the commission to consider, as the chair has noted, the applicant's compliance with the ordinance. It's a difficult charge that you have, but there is a responsibility on the commission to hold applicants accountable to the letter of the ordinance. When a board drifts outside of that, it becomes an unlawful act. And in this specific instance, there has been effort to make sure every letter of the ordinance has been met, and then willingness to accept conditions beyond that. Obviously your recommendation to the Board of Commissioners will be heard and considered, but from a shade tree perspective, this plan exceeds ordinance requirements. From a legal perspective, I don't see a lawful ground to not recommend it. And, I think it's important for there to be open dialogue and discussion between an applicant and a board like the shade tree, because it allows for continued discussion and benefit to the project. And I would just, I would ask the board to reconsider, the 2 members that would not recommend approval here, because the applicant has expressed a willingness to continue to work with the township and the neighbors to make this the best project that he can. And it may not be the ideal project for you all or for the neighbors, but it will ultimately be a benefit to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on. And thank you for your time and
Seth, could you
presenting.
give us 1 second,
Can
please?
I-
Yes.
May I just ask one question? Dave, this is going to have to come back before the BOC, correct?
For
Because
sure.
of the change, yes.
So it actually is it's waiting to come to you all. It's been through everyone else, so it's coming to you now for approval.
Because you guys have made that change, you have the new property there with the new home, so it's different than what we've seen in the past.
This plan is different, correct?
Yes, okay,
Yep.
so this does have to come back before the BOC.
For sure.
So there'll be opportunities still for people to share their concerns, but I do think that Seth is on the right track. They have met all the, they've met all the letter of the ordinance, and, it could move forward, but it will come back before the BOC.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So next order of business, non-hazardous tree removals. So 258 Ravenscliff. Do we have someone from the property here? Thank you for your patience. So it looks like we have, a 32-inch tulip tree, and the application was denied by the township. So if you could just please state your name, relation to the project, address, and give us an overview of what the situation is.
Great. Good evening. My name is Brian Quinn, owner at 258 Ravenscliff Road. And this is Sean Doherty, certified arborist and owner of Doherty Tree Care. Sean, you want to?
Yeah. So the Quinns just recently moved in there and had me come out to look at their trees. From past experience, they were concerned about the tulip tree. In their previous property, they've had a bunch of storm damage that has happened. I noted that it was improperly pruned before, has been thinned out. There's a slight lean towards the driveway and the house. With their concern, the only way that I could guarantee safety, because there is a potential for failure there, was a removal of the tree, which is why I submitted the hazardous tree report, which was denied. They want to move forward with removing the tree, so here we are.
Thank you. John, can you speak to this application?
Yeah, so anytime there's a hazardous tree report sent into the township, there's usually a defect, some sort of tribulation behind the actual reason for condemning the tree. Yes, I saw that it was improperly pruned. That does not constitute a hazard. The lean, it's growing through, because of phototropism, it's growing towards light.
Yeah.
The tree can be removed. They just have to meet the compensation of the 6-tree replacement or the fee in lieu of.
Right.
But, the term hazard tree, it was not risk-related due to any outward or foreseeable defects.
Yeah, so I'm a brand new business owner, haven't been through this process before.
We'll walk you through it.
I was advised from another arborist to take this direction, but that's good to know in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have a concern. I would have a concern as well, if I lived near that tree, but the term hazardous does not,
Right.
apply to this subject tree.
All right.
Yeah, I'm looking at the photos submitted. It's close to the house. Yes, I would be concerned as well.
And being new to this, I don't have any plans and stuff,
That's-
but for the replanting, they have a number of other large trees on the property. Most of their front yard, they don't really have much of a backyard at all, is under canopy already. So I think he was hoping to just.
So really, all you need to do is submit with the hazard application that you're going to replant or pay a fee in lieu of, which is $250 per tree, to the township. So you have two options.
For the 6 trees.
Yep, correct. So you can plant 6 trees on the property, 4 being large canopy, or you can give $250 per, it's a single dwelling, right?
Yes.
So $250 per tree for the 6 trees to the township's big tree fund, and be done with it.
So where do we go from here? We resubmit?
Resubmit and put either
Not
a
as a
planting
hazard.
plan or the fee in lieu of.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Either a planting plan or the fee in lieu of.
But not as a hazard tree.
No, you can put it as a hazard tree because it's a hazard tree to you guys. It's a concern of you.
Okay.
But I would still recommend, like, on the plans that you draw up, and they don't need to be super sophisticated CAD drawings. They can be, sketches, as long as you have DBH of the tree coming out, and then specify trees going in and their placements of those trees.
So you'll need to see plans for replanting even though
Yes.
if he goes a different direction.
What do you mean by different
Go to
direction?
200.
You need a planting plan. And the planting plan can be as much as a little tax map showing, with red pen, maple here, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be to scale or landscape architectural grade.
Sure. So next steps would be, there's nothing to approve tonight for you. What you would need to do is, go sleep on the decision of fee in lieu of plant new trees. From these photos, I'm not sure, John, is there any way to save this tree without risk of it falling into the house in your eyes?
I mean, with snow load, soil saturation, soil failure, any tree can fail. But
Sure.
there's no defect currently existing on that tree that, warrants condemning because of a hazard terminology.
And we always discourage, topping of trees and everything else, of course. And this looks like it's a pretty mature tree, so that would likely be the
No, it's definitely over mature, and they have the right to remove it. They just have to follow the, the ordinance
So-
for the replacement factor.
Take those two options back, sleep on it, and then reach out to the township with, what you'd like to move forward with. And then what we would need is, next meeting, whether it's plans or fee in lieu of, then we can go from there.
Well, we can approve that in-house.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you don't need to wait for that for the next meeting. So just take your actual same hazard tree plan that you sent in and just attach a plan, whether you're paying fee in lieu of or a little landscape plan showing where you're going to plant 6 trees, and you'll be approved.
All right.
It could be done within 48 hours if you send it tomorrow morning.
Perfect.
Well, so John, being a 30-inch heritage, that would need to come before us, correct? For approval?
Yeah, but the tree's not, it's actually 28 and a half inches, just so you know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
So-
Okay. So it's not 30. So that would, well, that would technically mean,
You put it in as a heritage tree, so.
Okay. It can't be taken back.
We're taking the 6 trees from you. So, you're good.
Great.
Well, thanks for boosting up that relationship between my client and me. Thank you.
Sure. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Pull that DVH a little bit tighter when you're pulling around the tree.
All right. Next item, so tree removal without approval. We already discussed 506 Chalmont. They're coming back. Number 8, violation notices, none listed. Now let's get to the good part of the meeting. So old business. So we have a very big fall planting coming up in less than a month. So 150 trees being planted, 100 of those at residence, 50 of those in parks. And there's a few items that we need to discuss tonight logistically. So before we get to that, though, just a couple of updates from an old business perspective. So the long-lived ordinance update for the personnel of commission, so specific to us, that is having one of our commission seats needing a requirement to also sit on the Parks and Rec Board. I haven't heard anything from Tammy or otherwise. Ricky, do you know if that made its way through the BOC yet?
Not that I know of. I didn't see it on the last meeting. I could reach out to her
Okay.
tomorrow to get an update.
Sure, thank you. I know that was being held up because that's grouped with Parks and Rec has the subsequent requirement of having a school board member on their commission, and it's kind of grouped together. So there was, I know, some discussions back and forth with the school district, so. is why it has been held up. The comprehensive update that is in progress, as we can work against it, given the time that we have available. The shade tree ordinance communication plan. So, Ginny, I'd meant to reply back to the thread regarding the flyer and real estate offices. So when we approved that flyer as a commission in June or whenever it was, we did approve with the, I don't want to say contingency, but with the approval of providing it to whomever was necessary, including real estate offices and brokers. So you're good to send those around, that version that was most recently sent. Because I know Lisa Borowski had sent it around to the BOC members, and I saw some of them included it in their flyers. So definitely you can send that around as much as you want. All right. Anything else on old business before we talk new business, fall planting, and other things? Okay. So fall planting. So registration status. So current count of residential signups 111 and volunteers 26. So we had previously agreed to close registration at 150. We're still at a 111, so I'm going to keep that open. With that 11 overage, hopefully, we might have a couple people cancel or otherwise, so we should have some buffer there. I wasn't planning on sending out another, register for trees, because at this point I think we have plenty of folks, but wanted to get your thoughts on that matter. I think we should just leave it as is for right now.
I agree, because as Jenny and I know, we have cancellations.
Yep,
So
sounds
we
good.
have room for 11 cancellations.
Great. And I did see some trickling in of some new registrations just from, maybe someone finally saw the social media post, or I know that Lisa had included it in her newsletter. So we might get a few more that trickle in over the next 30 days, so I think we're good. Next would be the volunteer social media posts. So we haven't done that yet. We wanted to first identify the specific parks that the trees were going to go into. And Frank has done a Herculean job with working with John, Ricky, and Steve, the Parks Director, to come up with good spots for trees and parks. So Frank, do you want to walk us through that? And I know that he has a presentation all ready for us.
That's why he's dressed up.
Dim the lights and turn on the disco ball.
Ian promised me a spotlight. Oh, shoot. Ian? I don't know how to get out of here.
Here he comes.
Good job, Frank.
He broke it.
Thank you. This one first. Okay. All right, thanks, Seth. Yeah, John and Ricky and Steve have identified some locations, but as some quick facts, we've got the 50 trees on November 19th. We're going to have the start at the Willows for many reasons. We need about 40 to 50 volunteers. We have 31 that have signed up so far, and it includes residents, Cabrini students, Shriner employees, as well as Radnor tree tenders, commissioners, and people from the Radnor Conservancy. The parks that I'm proposing are Harford, Cohen, Ditmar, and the Willows, and the trail, the Harford Trail, is also in there. Kind of like these because we haven't really been there before, so it's kind of expanding some of the plantings that we're doing throughout the township. And we are going to have set that flyer that you put together for more volunteers. When that can go out, I think the 31 will start increasing. And as a backstop, PHS told me today that if we don't get enough volunteers, they'll have some for us also. So I think we're pretty cool there. Harford, there's a brand-new Hartford Trail that runs along the back of that corporate center, and we're planning on 20 trees there. There's some losses up by the Kreutzberg Center, by the dog park, that we could put 5 additional trees there. So we have 3 huge ones that have been destroyed years ago, but we have room for 5 trees up there. And I figured 25 volunteers could be sent here and spend the morning doing trees. Cohen, we've taken down a large tree of some species on the road, and others have been taken down, so Steve wanted to put 3 there. And some of it's in response to a neighbor that says she would like the trees planted there also. And we can stick 2 elsewhere in the park, back in the corner. The James C. Ditmar Park, which I personally did not know existed. I'm suggesting up around this back corner where there's not a lot of trees, but we could get 5 volunteers and 5 trees planted up there. And then finally, I think this is a great suggestion from John, get 15 volunteers and 15 trees and plant them along Darby Paley Road. That little green circle, that's what we did last April. So, you know, that whole, what you see from Darby Paley Road would look pretty cool, okay? So that's officially the end of the good news. Challenges, it's not a big one. Difficulty getting food donated. I've been going out hat in hand begging and have had a lot of rejection. Fortunately, I've had a lot of rejection in my life, so I'm able to take it. Our plan B is to cater it ourselves. So I went out and did some pricing. You know, for about $500, we could get a nice breakfast, light breakfast, you know, to give to the volunteers up at the Willows, and a light lunch that we could have back at the Willows when they get done their plantings. Nothing high end, but, you know, something just to say thank you for the people spending 4 to 5 hours
Yes.
digging holes and getting dirty.
Frank and I caught up, and we had discussed that at this point in time, you know, we're less than 30 days out. If it got to this point, what we would propose is approving using our Big Tree Fund to compensate for the breakfast and lunch. Because it's under the limits after this, what I would do is go to Bill White, get him to sign off on this, and who knows, the township might be willing to, you know, throw some dough our way from whatever other funds can be found. So in order to make that happen, what we would just need to quickly do is vote on this. So I would make a motion to approve to use up to, I'll say $600 for taxes and other things, for breakfast and lunch for our fall park planting. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, so we will make those logistics happen. Thank you, Frank.
That was it.
All right.
Excellent job, Frank.
Yes, thank you.
Feel better now, Frank?
Good. Great. So as mentioned, what we will next do is I had put together a social media post for a call for volunteers. I will get that sent off to Molly, and we will get that sent out. I guess the other vote I would like to quickly take is to vote on the park placements. But first, John or Ricky, do you guys have any comments you want to discuss regarding the placements of the park trees that we picked?
No, we're good. We'll work with Frank to pinpoint those locations with flags. Frank knows the idea, and Mr. Ledgerton and myself have talked about it a few times.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, so I'll make a motion to approve placements of trees in the parks as outlined by Frank. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. One more vote.
Seth, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I just wanted to make sure that appreciate, you know, John walking through, and also Frank, but, you know, all of these trees, it's a trio of them. So the park supervisor is heavily involved in where those trees are placed and what parks are used. So it's kind of all 3 of them have been working together. So just from the township aspect, I just wanted to say that those locations have been vetted through him.
Great. Thank you, Ricky. Lastly, so we've had plenty of discussions around tree diapers. Great name. So the original plan was we were going to try and carve out 20 trees for the WBA, but that is just taking too long to work with the property owners to get approvals for. So that was when we made the decision for those full 50 to go into the parks that we just discussed. But as an experiment, what we wanted to do was purchase 20, correct, Frank, 20 tree diapers? 20 tree diapers at what amount were they each? $27. And that math is 20 times 27. It's too late for me.
$500.
Thank you, 540. So the purpose of the tree diapers are this. So we're all familiar with the gator bags, right? So pros and cons between gator bags and tree diapers. Gator bags, someone has to go around and fill them with water every so often. Tree diapers, the way they work is they are a tarp material, black tarp material on top, and then on the bottom it's like a mesh material. And they are filled with material that's similar to what's in a diaper, where it absorbs water. And
Hydrogel.
It's a gel, thank you. And it recharges itself from rainfall. I personally have tested a few of these this season, and they've worked really well. After every rainfall, I go and poke them, and I'm like, oh, that's wild. They're filled up again. And what ends up happening is the roots of the newer trees, they have smaller roots, bigger roots, but the smaller roots will kind of gravitate up towards where the tree diaper is, and that will water them. So the goal of getting the 20 was for the trees that are planted kind of in the back pockets in the WBA where they might not get watered all the time, to help save those. But since those trees are now shifted to the parks, we did put in an order for 20. I gave Frank the authorization to do that. However, we still need to approve the expenditure of that 540 tonight. Then during my conversation with Bill White, he'll be angry with me for spending all these disposable funds. But I think this would be a good experiment. And then moving forward, especially to help Public Works with having in parks to go around and watering all of these trees, it might be a good experiment, if they are successful, to take some of that burden off of Public Works and parks to have to go around and water all of these trees that we're putting in. So it's an experiment. Put on your mic.
Are these reusable? So in other words, when the tree gets big enough or whatever and doesn't need it any longer, we can put it on another new tree?
So they are meant to kind of, once you plant and place the tree diaper, to be there for the entirety of the tree.
Okay.
Now, obviously, at some point, the tree outgrows the diaper, but the diaper does have a slit in it. So if it were to be left there, once the tree is mature, 30 years from now, it wouldn't harm it.
Okay.
But by then, it would be removed.
Okay.
It also has the benefit of, weeds do not grow there because there's a thing there. And you are meant to put, like an inch or two worth of mulch over top of the tree diaper, and that helps during your typical temperature change throughout the day. In the morning to the evening, you have your morning dew, and then you have your burn off from the sun. That helps retain all of that within the diaper. So seemingly it's been working well for me. I'm hoping it would be something good that we can test out here. So I need to make a motion to approve using another $540 from our Big Tree Fund, verified that we do have the funds in the bank to do so. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Great. Next order of business.
Seth, one
Yes.
quick question. You had asked me to get 2 invoices from PHS.
Yes.
They gave me 1, and I
Okay.
went back to them and say I need 2. So now I'm kind of asking the question, probably more of Leah than anyone else. Do I have to go back and insist on 2 invoices?
Because the first one was approved by the Board of Commissioners, I can check and see if Bill can do a change order for that, since
No,
it's only
I'll get the
540.
second invoice. It's a lot easier to lean on that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, so we touched off on the parks. I think we're good on the parks, correct? Okay, so residential plantings, just we'll quick chat about this. Like we normally do, what we will volunteer to do is go around and knock on the 100 doors, talk with them regarding placements of trees, and chat about them a little bit with species and care and all that good stuff. So my plan is either tomorrow or Friday, I will send around a list. And Ginny, like what you've done previously, where you batch a group of addresses in the similar vicinity, so as we're driving around, we can kind of stay in the same area. I will do that again. My plan is I'll split it out into 5 groupings. That way it would be 20 homes per person, which I know is a lot, but we can pick away at this over the next few weekends. So, if you do 10 a weekend or what have you, doesn't sound too terrible. I am willing to pick up the slack where, if people are busy or what have you.
When are the stakes going to be available?
I am going to get stakes for all of us.
Put them at the entrance like we usually do?
And I will, yeah, I'll put them at the entrance of the township building, or my house, one or the other. But I'll communicate all the details to you guys at that point. My son needs his hours for his license, so this will be a good excuse to drive around. In regards to who is planting the 100 trees at the residence. So we have Tree Authority LLC planting 50 trees. That invoice is all good to go. All the logistics are approved. And then a combination of John and his group and Steve Schreiner and his team planning the rest of the 50 along with our dear friends at Public Works. And I'll let you guys figure out the 50. And Ricky, I can give you a call this week and we can figure out if we want to peel off a certain section of the township and the registrants that we've received, maybe, the closer ones to the township building you guys do, or, we can figure that out. But obviously you guys will get first dibs on where you plant, and then we can give Tree Authority the remaining to plant. But any discussion regarding that, or does that sound good to you?
No, that sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Any other comments on the residential planting? Okay. Any other comments on the planting in general? Did we cover off on everything? Makes sense? Great. Biggest planting to date by the Shade Tree Commission, which I think is
I think we're the
great.
biggest for PHS also.
Biggest from PHS.
And
too.
they've also exceeded their previous record. Over 2,000 trees are being planted.
That's great.
Throughout the Philadelphia area.
That's amazing. Yeah. Good work to everyone. I know it's going to be quite the Herculean effort across the board, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, tree maintenance proposal. Tree maintenance pilot proposal. So I had sent around to the commission a tree maintenance pilot, and let me just quick summarize what that memo was and its intent and its next steps. So as we've been discussing over the past few years, we understand and recognize as a township that we lack a formalized tree maintenance program. So what we've attempted in the past, I think, was great, but it was overzealous because it was a big program that would require a lot of campaigning and finding funds, and what the direction that we took to try and move this forward was to wrap this into a pilot, keep it small if it is successful, and we're able to prove its success, then moving forward, we would look to find grants or other funds to continue this moving forward, with the hope that the long-term goal of this is the township will have less hazard and dying trees to remove later on because they're taken care of, devined, possibly injected, possibly pruned, and that this would be a great thing for the township. So the idea is this. We would work with, we would discuss ourselves, we would work with Public Works, the township arborist, parks, whoever else needs to be involved. And we would look to identify locations on an annual basis and do $50,000 worth of maintenance. That would be pruning, devining, and possibly injections. In speaking with Ricky, John, James, and a few others, what I had proposed is we start with the Radnor Trail and the Willows, and what we would do is find a contractor to work at both the Radnor Trail and the Willows to do pruning, devining, and injections, possibly injections. And what we would do, obviously, as the stewards of this program, would be identify some spots on the Radnor Trail. Obviously, for $50,000, we couldn't take care of the whole trail, but identify spots on the trail that definitely need some love and attention. And I think there's plenty of those spots. And then the same thing with the Willows. There are definitely some bigger trees that are up behind the mansion and just kind of tucked around that definitely need to be devined and pruned. And we would do that on an annual basis, meaning we would evaluate new locations every year. And obviously we would focus on township property areas, so parks, right-of-way areas, and other areas, and use that as our program. As mentioned, if this is a success and we're able to prove, that this does help, reduce the cost of removals over time, and I'm sure we'll get, good public reception based off of cleaning some of these areas up. That that in itself as a pilot would be great for us to expand this program possibly in years to come. So I'll take a quick pause there. Ricky, did you want to touch on kind of what our conversations were with Bill White and what this could look like from a approval budget perspective in 2023?
Yeah, basically, when I had a chance to speak with the manager, after looking over your proposal, he was fine with everything, and the way he figured that it would go about is we would be able to use the tree fund that we already have. Since it's not set aside for the 2023 budget, he would be able to get it approved to use those funds to kick off the maintenance program if it was approved by the BOC.
And just a point of clarification there, there is a fund for tree removals on an annual basis, and
Yeah.
that part of the fund would be contributed towards this,
Yes, sir.
if it so pleases the Board of Commissioners.
Oh, I'm only one, so I do like that you have thought this out, and that there is also, I think, the thought of outsourcing this, because I know that our staff, I think, is currently very strapped with just managing what we've got already. So I like that idea. I like getting started with it. I'd like to see it built into the budget as like a recurring thing, and I think that was the original intent, but I agree with the idea of the pilot to get started. And I think that working with the staff to identify areas, I might just throw out, the area where they planted on the trail, where they planted all the new tap trail, the extension along Radnor Chester, where they planted all those new trees, is already really, the vines, the invasives have already taken over, but that's just, something that I noticed. I'm sure you guys are far more observant and know better where it might go, but to me, that's one space, and because those trees are so new, it would seem like they're really, at risk if we can't clean that area out. So I might just suggest that to put in the mix as you guys are thinking about it. But I would the idea was that I think this would become like a recurring thing in our budget. So it is something that, we are, because then it is truly maintenance. It's not just a one-shot deal because we have the money, but we put it in the budget and we budget for it every year.
100%. Yeah, and just one point of clarification on the budget and the conversation with Bill White. So just as we were kind of late in the budget game, that was kind of the proposed thought from the township manager to, kind of divert funds towards kind of the same goal, the same mission, wrap that as a pilot for 23, and then, get that baked into the budget formally for, 2024 at that point. And, just one point on using contractors. Obviously, there are some townships out there that have tree equipment. So we're talking, chippers, cranes, a crew. But obviously, that's in the millions of dollars territory. So, using a contractor, we're using their services, their equipment, their people. Ricky's team is great, but I'm sure that tree companies can prune. I don't know. We'll have a pruning competition, Ricky. But what I'm getting at is, we'll get as much bang for our buck as we can, with this thought and pilot. And I think it's a good way to move forward. Any comments from the commission?
I've got this song going through my head. I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
So, Seth,
thank you, Frank.
You mentioned right away. So that's going to be, when you talk about millions of dollars, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars in the right of way. So, and that also brings the residents into play, and it brings, so that's obviously something off in the distance, I would imagine, right?
Sure, yeah, so the thought would be, we pick a new spot. So let's say, we're only able to maneuver a $50,000 budget every year, which obviously we would hope that would increase, contingent upon us providing and showing value. But let's say we stuck with that 50,000 every year. Each year we would pick a new location. Now, obviously, vines regrow, and trees need pruned all the time. But the thought would be, if you were to think about a 10-year time frame, we could hopefully make our rounds at the really egregious areas within the township that need a lot of love, and then we circle back around, to kind of start where we left off. Now, that obviously is not an ideal scenario, but it's just one perceived thought of how that could work. Hopefully, throughout the years, we can inch away towards, the larger amount of what is spent towards tree removals every year, and, potentially do some of the more and more proactive maintenance so that we don't have to go out and do some reactive removals. Make sense?
So, Matt, I forget, did your survey that you worked so hard on, does that ID hazardous trees? So we can make use of that
Yeah.
for, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting old now. It's
Yeah.
5 years old, 4 years old. So,
Yeah, I mean, all that
a lot
work, I feel like we really should be utilizing that more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it would, it was 6,500 trees, so it's, I don't know how many of those have been removed at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, my one comment regarding that is, as we know, removals are expensive, and the pilot part of this would be the low-cost maintenance. I know this is $50,000, but the low-cost maintenance, so the devining, the pruning, and possible injections. And I would save injections for high-value trees. So let's say there's a heritage tree within a park that, we see that's, in decline and we want to try and save. That's, what I would spend that injection money for, but I wouldn't go around and inject all the ash trees in Radnor Township. So at some point, if it gets to the point where, we do have more funds available to us, we get those funds approved by the BOC in the budget for the following year, and we start to do those, proactive removals, then that could be the next step in evolution of this.
Seth?
Yes.
I would suggest that we have some expectations set for the BOC, so that if we go out and prune 5 trees and inject 5 trees, the benefit there was we didn't have to cut them down.
Sure.
And that, we'd be metric focused to say we spent this 50,000, but we saved 100,000.
So as providing we approve the memo that I had sent around and I believe is in the packet, when this goes in front of the BOC as this proposed fund diversion, we'll call it, I will certainly speak to that in person and talk about, metrics and how we'll measure for success, definitely. All right, any other comments from township staff or otherwise?
I just wonder, and I don't know if this requires an ordinance change, or I'm not sure, but the monies that we use when people take down trees and we get the funds from them as compensation, we use that money for the replanting, correct? So I guess we already are, if we're taking from the replanting. I wonder if we just automatically start to divert some funds from there to this kind of maintenance plan, and then, I don't know, I just throw that out there. I don't know if that requires a change in the ordinance or something like that, but.
I think the way the Big Tree Fund is what it's specifically called, is dedicated towards plantings. But we could certainly, look into that offline. I do know, we are, in years past, we've had a large sum of money in our Big Tree Fund, and we've gotten good at kind of, spending it every year, which is the intent of it. So I don't know that there would be a significant amount of money that we could divert to maintenance without impacting our planting. But something certainly to think about and consider. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so I will make a motion to approve this memo. We will get it in front of the BOC for approval, and I will attend that meeting when it gets on the agenda, and I welcome any of y'all to show up and help me fight the good fight. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, great, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This is really, it's an exciting first step. Something that people have wanted for a really long time, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Baby steps. Okay, STC member recruitment. So we we thanked Ginny for her service on the Shade Tree Commission. She is moving on to the, am I allowed to break the news? Okay, she's moving on to greener pastures, but we will not announce the specifics just yet. So that leaves us with 2 openings. One we can fill right now. The other one we can't fill until that Parks and Rec requirement is removed. I know we had a couple of applicants, I believe, possibly reach out to the township. Have Ricky or Leah, you've been copied on those or know anything about that?
They would have been sent to the manager's office, and it would be something they would appoint in January.
Okay, so we can work offline to follow up with Bill White or whomever and see if we've gotten any applicants, but for us, for the public audience, spread the word. We have a couple of openings. Likely what I will do is put together I know Molly had just sent out, I forget, I think it was EAB or one of the other commissions where there were a couple of openings. In any event, I'll put together a flyer, and we'll have Molly send that out, and we'll see if we can get a bolus of new members. Okay, to close out new business, Frank has one last presentation. So you went to a tree canopy conference at Haverford College on the 13th. Would you like to present?
I know I'm standing in the way of your next scotch.
Bourbon, but that's all right.
I will be quick.
No, don't be rushed, Frank. Honestly, this was a good conference, and there's a lot of good key takeaways from this. So, do not rush through it.
So I went to this tree canopy conference at Haverford College on the 14th. I'm sorry to have my back to you, but it was an all-day affair, and as I was kind of assimilating all the information I got, I had a couple of key takeaways that I thought I could share as part of our education. The first item was the Ambler Arboretum and its tornado disaster. They're a 187-acre Arboretum up at Temple's Ambler campus. They lost 510 trees in 7 minutes as a tornado swept through. They lost a lot of buildings, too. I don't know. But it did build. It didn't kill any people, which I think is probably the big miracle, but it did kill 510 trees. Their advice, the ED for that was to document everything. So most of it is for insurance purposes. But if we have lists and photographs of, I don't know, the willows, and a tornado goes through and we want to get insurance money, it's good to have that stuff someplace so we can show the insurance people. The odd fact was they tried to get money from FEMA. You've all heard of FEMA, from Katrina. So they said we only do buildings, okay? So they actually argued that our trees are a classroom. And the guy said, oh, okay, but we can't approve that because if we approve it for you, we're going to have to approve it for the whole country. So they sent it up to Washington, and they got compensated because trees are classrooms as they teach people horticulture and biology and such. So I thought that was pretty cool. We had PICO, Davy Resources, talk about what they do with power grids. And PICO has a 13,000-mile utility network in our area. And what became very clear, what they care about is reducing outages. They care about canopy, but it's quite a secondary type concern of theirs. And I also learned they don't take the wood away. They cut the tree, pile up the wood, don't grind the stumps, and, they're gone. And they're assessing this. And we had this, Eileen's not here, but we had this on St. David's Road where they cut down a lot of trees. And they were very nice to us because they're not normally giving us money for additional trees. This was very interesting, human health and safety benefits. This was the North Research Station of the Forest Service. They did a 2020 health impact assessment of Philadelphia tree cover. Philadelphia's got between 10 and 20% tree cover right now, and they have a stated goal of increasing it to 30% by 2025. They found out that there are 403 premature deaths overall that could be prevented if they had met their 30% cover. And this was because of keeping people out of the heat, giving them recreation. It cuts down on violence in neighborhoods, a whole list of socio behaviors that result in people not getting killed. And you're not going to be shocked at this, but your socioeconomic status made you more likely to die prematurely. Poor neighborhoods have less trees, and they have higher crime rates and higher premature deaths, and they're attributed to the lack of tree canopy. So that was pretty cool, and this was a pretty professional study. This was achieving equity. Southwest Philadelphia, which some of you may know about, has an 8.2% canopy. So 92% is just open buildings, tree, and houses and stuff. To meet the 30%, Southwest Philly has to come up with planting 17,000 trees. by 2025. You know, it's kind of like take all the time you need. It's an enormous goal. One of my takeaway was during the summer when we had a lot of heat, if you lived in Southwest Philly versus Society Hill, where there's a lot of tree cover, there was a 22-degree difference. So it would be 70 in Society Hill, and it would be, 92, in Southwest Philly. They talked about trying to convince people to plant trees. Now, you may have had this problem here in Radnor. So we asked them what their weird reasons were that people had for not planting trees. One woman said, "How big a tree? What? This will benefit my neighbor? Then no, I will do nothing to benefit her." Spiteful. And this other guy complained to the person, "You planted that tree 40 years ago. Birds are eating the fruit and soiling my car. No more trees." So it's not the planting of the tree that really annoys people. It's all of these other consequences. We talked about shade tree ordinances. They talked about how important they are for managing your forest. They provide legal authority for programs, for approving or disapproving things like we just went through tonight. One thing I thought was pretty cool is they think we should have stop work orders somehow in the ordinance so that, anyone could go out and you'd have an ordinance to stop people from taking down trees, not having to wait. And they said to include everybody in the planning process because you just can't borrow something from different township and just insert it into your mix.
One quick comment on the stop order. Because it's a code violation, we can stop work on tree work, right? Right, yeah.
So we have that?
So it's not specifically in our tree ordinance, but it's because they're violating code, removing trees per our.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And then finally, we talked about with climate change, tree zones are moving north. So Philadelphia was in Zone 6 in 1990. We're now in Zone 7 and then by 2070, we're going to be in Zone 8. So trees that did very well in the south are now doing very well up here. They talked about loblolly pines, does well now, and that's now appearing on the PHS list of trees that we can order. And I think Radnor Conservancy is also offering loblolly pines. Morris Arboretum did an experiment where they planted all these different types of magnolias over at the Arboretum. And most southern trees, magnolias, will turn brown in the winter. With climate change, they're not turning brown. He goes, every tree they planted, every species they planted has done exceedingly well. So it's just a result of us getting a warmer climate up here. One odd fact, someone asked, will this, because, sugar maples are moving north, and he said, will this affect maple syrup production? And the presenter said, only in that it will be called Canadian syrup. And that was it.
And the best slide, the slide with the squirrel.
I love the slide.
Great work, Frank, and thank you for your time in going and putting together these takeaways. Very good. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Anything else on the new business? Good. Annual goals. We know them. We're headed towards them. Great. Number 12, hazardous trees. So it looks like there were a few. Ricky, do you want to speak to any of those hazardous trees that came through?
Yeah, all those trees were looked at by John and opined on. So all of them had a requirement to be, met the requirements to be removed.
Thank you. Trees removed by Radnor Township. Looks like there were a few. Anything noteworthy there, Ricky?
Yeah, all of them also met the requirement. We were called on by residents or passersby, and after John inspected them, they had to be removed also. But the one I want to draw your attention to is the last one, Liberty Lane, just because the amount of trees that were taken down, even though it was 4 different species. We actually received a call from a resident that lives at those Liberty Lane condos, and she said the branches were falling while the kids were out playing. So we had John go out along with the park supervisor, and all of the trees were from our park, Friends of Radnor Trail. So after looking at those, any tree that was a hazard was basically marked, and that's what we came up with, and they were removed.
Great. Now, in your opinion, John and Ricky, any of those trees, if they would have had maintenance done to them, devining, pruning, do you think they would have had a good chance of survival?
Liberty Lane, most certainly.
Okay.
Definitely
Good.
Liberty Lane.
So proof of our proposal right there.
Absolutely. And I'm in
Good.
support of it.
I'm really
I did talk to Mr. Norsini on the phone out there on a different matter. And I did ask about the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is required, and they would have to actually go in front and get a waiver to not put the sidewalk in. Just so you know that.
What
yeah.
about porous, though, John? Could he do yes, sidewalk, and we all agree we need a sidewalk because of safety, but could it be porous or jagged out to, save those trees there?
So the porous, as the engineer stated, has a deeper base, which would cause greater harm to the structural roots. The jagged, going around trees, that would be a question for Mr. Norsini.
But either would likely require a waiver.
Not to put it in.
Right. Well, and even
They're required to put it in. They would need a waiver to not put it in.
We're not asking them not to put it in.
I understand that. Somebody asked about, do we really need a sidewalk? That was one of the questions. Correct. And that's what I was asking the question to Mr. Norsini. He said they are required to put a sidewalk in.
Thank you, John.
I wanted to validate the question you guys were asking.
Thanks, John. That's
One section of that is not being put in anyway. Did they get a waiver for that? Because there's one section.
You'd have to ask the township engineer on that. I wanted to validate if that was true, whether they really had put a sidewalk.
All right. Before we adjourn, any other public participation? Oh.
Christina Peters, 429 King of Prussia Road. Liberty Lane, there was liability there potentially with trees, kids playing, limbs falling. So when you consider what to spend on tree maintenance, it's not just the cost of taking that tree down that you could have saved yourself. You're also cutting off liability. A branch that falls, a tree that comes down with a vine, that's a sudden event and a dangerous event that doesn't have to happen. Secondly, if you look at Hartford Park, I'm very pleased to see we're putting those trails in, and I did notice there seems to have been some devining along that trail. Thank you very kindly. There are, 3-4 acres of streamside land that are unusable because they're covered with vines. How much would the township have to pay to acquire that land and make it a park? It's unusable right now. We might as well not own it. Thirdly, a lot of the invasive vines that are in that area are on the campus of the Radnor Corporate Center. We have a weed ordinance. Why don't we tell them they gotta clean it up? And their trees would be standing too. So just a few thoughts about how to justify and extend your budget, which I think is $50,000 is a good start, but certainly not all we need, and about how we can maybe extend this initiative toward private landowners, both corporate and neighbors. If your neighbor's got ivy crawling all the way up a big oak tree, that tree is becoming more unsafe by the day. Once again, weed ordinance. Thank you.
Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue, and this was a free program. I attended to listen to Doug Tallamy at the Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church on Sunday. He spoke in the morning on a new concept that's called Homegrown National Park. Because of property rights, things are being carved up into smaller and smaller portions. So anybody for free can sign up with a homegrown national park to begin to develop larger ecosystems. And that brought another thought to mind. There were several other townships who were represented by Shade Tree or by their EAC. And it goes in line with a comment that Doug Tallamy made, that he's being called by more and more and more municipalities to come and talk. And there are only so many hours in the day and how many weeks. So he suggested, and I'd like to pass this idea on to Shade Tree in Radnor Township, that the township, working with the EAC and the Green Team, and you could really pile it up, for Radnor to sponsor a talk with Doug, really aimed at municipalities and what they can do. It would bring in cachet to the township. It also would be a great service. But there were a couple of takeaways that I learned. How difficult it's going to be, but how important it is for us to begin to reduce the amount of lawns that need herbicide, for the education to keep leaves on properties under trees, because Doug very much works with the interaction of insects to birds to trees. And it's absolutely vital in order to preserve insects. They're losing species right and left. Because of climate change, the birds are coming earlier, and if there are no leaves there and there's no litter, there's nothing for fledglings or those still in the nest to eat. So you're having smaller clutches, so you have fewer birds. I mean, he makes this connection. He spent some time talking about planting trees in groupings. Now, this can't be done on street trees, but it certainly can be done, and it's something I would suggest for parks, because trees interlock their roots, therefore the trees have more stability, and you're not going to have trees just blowing over with winds. So this was a thought that I really took away from it and was very important. And then he mentioned, and this I had never, Radnor removes deer because of accidents. But as Doug said, the deer are eating everything when it's small. And so we actually need to remove deer to protect trees and shrubs, which then the whole thing is to preserve ecosystems. So one of the thoughts I had was that sometimes I think Radnor thinks it lives in a bubble, but we don't. So I would like to see greater conversation, and maybe be done with having Doug there to facilitate it, to be talking to our surrounding townships so that we preserve corridors for trees, for plants, for animals. It just was a whole different way of looking at it. It was extremely valuable. There were easily 100 people there. And hats off to Bryn Mawr Press, who sponsored this. It was absolutely free, and if you did the morning and the afternoon lecture, you also got lunch. So it was a really great experience. And of course, he just takes fabulous photographs. And it's very heartwarming to see that he's working on this and his reputation is spreading. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And if you don't mind, send me his contact info. Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Good night.